All right, let's jump into recruiting contracts and agreements. Explain different types of agreements that you're going to need as you move forward with your recruitment agency. So, what I'm going to touch on in this video are 4 different agreements or contracts. By the way, I always call it an agreement when I'm speaking to a client. I think the word contract is a little bit intimidating. Unfortunately, it can have negative connotation to it. So, I like using the word agreement, it's just softer. I'm big into psychology when it comes to sales. So that's what I use. So I'm going to jump into 4 agreements for your staffing agency. Number 1 will be the contract or contract to hire agreement. For those of you that are going to jump into the temp to hire, which I did for 25 years, extremely lucrative, great model, residual, all that great stuff. You can exit it and make a ton of money. I'll go over that contract. Number 2, I'll dive into traditional direct hire. When you make a placement and get a fee of 25 or 30%, not 15% or 10%. I'll go over that agreement. The third agreement I'll go over is the engagement search or engaged search. So I'll show you how that works as well. And the fourth and final one, for those of you that want to dive into what I love the best and what I do for my recruiting company, is performance-based search, or what we call retained search. I don't call it retained search because, again, attorneys do retain search, and unfortunately, people have had bad experiences with attorneys. I don't want to strike a nerve, so I call it performance-based search. Haha, sales psychology. Okay, let's go. Let's dive into it. So here we are on the Recruitemy membership site where I list all the agreements for my members to access anytime they want in our template library down here under forms and scripts. And like I said, the first one we have here, I've got a bunch in here. So engage. Also, credit applications are going to be good to have if you're going to be doing the temp to hire structure, because when you do that, you are going to be financing payroll for most likely 30 days before you receive a penny or any payment from your client. So you really want to make sure that your client is creditworthy. And so having a credit application that they can fill out is important. Let me kind of give you a preview of what this looks like. Open it up here. All right, so this is it's a standard credit application. Let's see, client name, and then you want to run this like in Dun & Bradstreet is what I used to use to run credit applications on companies. And then if it came back unfavorable, you then would have a conversation with your client, not an email, guys. You want to pick up the phone, call your client, and have a conversation with them, an adult, mature business conversation. Hey, look, we were really excited about partnering with you. However, understand we are assuming a pretty big risk going forward here into this project with making a few placements with you as temporary hires or contract hires. As you know, we've got a cash float over the next 4 to 5 weeks before we get payment. And it's important for us to know that, we'll be assured to get our money on time. We did run a credit check. It did not come back as favorable. And I wanted to talk to you about it and see if there's something that we can work out. And in one case, I remember years ago, I had an order for 20 technicians and the credit app came back okay. It wasn't fantastic, but this company, had a lot of money, but the money was tied up, they told me. So what I worked out with them was a business line of credit, essentially, where they would put about $20,000 or $30,000 into an escrow account. And that was like insurance money. If they ever were late on payments, we could tap into that. So that's always a creative way to work with your clients. And if your clients, have bad credit and they don't want to work with you, guys, that's a blessing in disguise. It's a red flag, and I would not work with those companies. All right, moving right along. Let's go into the temp contract agreement. Give you a preview of this. So guys, a lot of the stuff here is like legal verbiage that I don't really know myself, but it's good to have on your agreement. I had attorneys that did draw these up, so they are professionally done by attorneys. I've never had a problem with my agreements. They're secure, they're solid, and I've used these for many years. So, pretty standard stuff right here. So when you're a member at Recruitemy, you just download this, put your logo up here, change your name, the word tracks, etc., and you can use this. It's a Word document. So yeah, obviously the date, company name, etc. Let me scroll down here. So right here is important, right? Consultant minimum retention term. What this means is your client agrees to carry a contract employee from you for a period of 174 hours. That's basically 4.5 weeks, essentially, maybe 5 weeks, Why is that important? All right, guys, if you get an order to hire like a project manager, for example, or anybody who's in IT, and you know you're going to work your tail off probably to find this candidate, unless you have someone in your pipeline that's great. But in most cases, we don't. And is it really worth placing a contract employee for, I don't know, 10 hours, 20 hours, 30 hours? I always ask my client, hey, are you able to give our employee 40 hours a week? It's, and if they tell me no, hey, this is only going to be a short-term project for like 2 weeks and probably part-time, 20 hours each week, I'm not really interested in that business. It's not worth it for us to do the legwork and to make minimum profit on that. So that's why I put 174 hours in my agreement. I'll take business from a client where I place a contract employee if it's at least a month. That's worth our time. So that's what that means. I always put net 10 on here as billing terms to receive our payment, and then delinquent after 20. And I let them tell me otherwise, right? So there are cases where they're like, hey, everything looks great in the agreement, but we just can't do net 10. And I'll say, okay, how about we meet in the middle at like net 20? Because standard's usually net 30, right? And a lot of times, I would say over 95% of the time, I'll get a net 20 payment term, which I'm really happy about, because it used to be for so long, it was always net 30 was the standard. But I'm seeing that get better nowadays in our favor as recruiting agency owners. All right, moving right along. We then have, let's see, a bunch of legal jargon right here. Non-solicitation is important, so right to hire. During the term of this agreement and for 1 year thereafter, basically says the client will not solicit your employee. So if you find an employee, place the employee, and then let's say a month later, the client fires the employee, but then hires them back, they can't do that, right? So that protects you from that. You also could put a verbiage in here where if you submit a candidate over to the client, they can't backdoor you and hire that candidate for over a year's time. That's important too. What you're doing is protecting your time and your money when you guys are searching for candidates. So that's important to have in here. Here are the terms for if your client wants to hire your consultant before the time frame is up. So I always do 6 months right to hire, 180 days. That's how I structure temp agreements. That's 6 months. So if they keep a consultant on for 6 months, pretty much work 40 hours a week, then after that, they can take the consultant at no charge. Anything before that, which has happened many a times, they're like, man, this guy's great, Russ. This lady's amazing. They've been on board now for 2 months. We want to just go ahead and hire this person. Well, you can do that, but it's going to be a buyout. And here's the structure right here. So 0 to 30, you're going to pay us 25% of their salary. 31 to 60 days they're working is going to be 20%. 61 to 120 days will be 15%. And then 121 to 180 will be 10%. Anything after 180 is essentially they can take the person over to their payroll and we don't earn any more fees. So that's how that's set up. I know I've seen different structures, guys. That's always worked for me. So I just wanted to share that with you. And then, most of the stuff, again, is just legal jargon, nothing too crazy. Pretty simple term of agreement. Sales tax isn't even really applicable here. And they sign it and you're off to the races. So the way I explain it to my client when I tell them an agreement's coming over, I give them the highlights, right? So I say, hey, look, here's the agreement. It's net 10 payment terms. We do need at least a month's worth of work. Do you see any reason why you can't commit to at least a month of work for our consultant? And then I hit them with the buyout structure. Hey, look, if you ever want to take this employee over, we've had clients that just love our employees and want to hire them. It's a good thing. But just so you know, we do have a buyout schedule you're going to see on the agreement. Anything before 180 days, we will earn a fee from that. But anything after 180 days, they're yours essentially for free. And those are really the only points that I hit on with the client, the highlights, and they're pretty appreciative that I do that. I save them some time. And then I send it over. I usually always send it over in Word format because they want to sometimes redline it. They'll have their legal team look at it and bounce it back to you. Okay, so that is the temp to hire contract agreement. Let's go into with candidate NDAs. All right, direct hire, right? So standard headhunting, you charge a fee, pretty basic here, guys. So let's go to the highlights here. Billing in terms, stuff. All right, again, I did all invoices are due upon receipt. That's what I do for direct hires, and it's never really an issue. So that's good for us. And then here is the replacement credit that I do structure. So if you place somebody and the client fires them, or if they're just not a good fit, or if your candidate quits, then you got to give your client some type of guarantee, right? So we tell our client, look, if that happens between 0 to 30 days, you'll have a 100% placement credit. 31 to 60 will be 50%, 61 to 90, 25%. And then anything after 91 days, we deem the search fee as being earned. That's how we structure that. Guys, don't worry about this 2,000. That probably should not be there. That's more of the engaged search, which I'll get to next. But you put your fee right here. In this instance, it was 20%. We just changed that to 25, 30. I always shoot between 25 to 30% and let the client tell me otherwise and negotiate from there. Why not? But I never go below 20%. All right, more legal stuff. Don't worry about it. These are pretty standard and simple, these agreements. Yeah, that's really it. So I give them the payment terms. Hey, due on receipt, 20%, and you will have a placement credit guarantee back should the candidate not work out for you. All good there. All right, moving right along. I think the engagement search agreement, yeah, here it is up here. All right, what is engaged search? So for those of you that aren't sure what this is, let me open this up. Engaged search is when you do direct hire, but you also, your client's going to have skin in the game because you're going to ask for a small engagement fee up front of like $2,000 because you don't want to get ghosted by your client, right? And you want your client to have sense of urgency when you're finding candidates and submitting candidates over. So it's always awesome to have that little engagement fee in place, like on day one. It results in a stronger partnership with your clients from what I've seen. And we've had such better success in closing direct hire deals when it's set up like an engaged search. Again, your client has skin in the game. They're not going to really use a ton of other recruiters. They're going to be asking you where their candidates are, which is what you want. You want them breathing down your neck in a good way. And they're going to be vested in what you're doing. The best part about an engaged search is that the $2,000 they give you on day one, you should set that aside like in your savings account. That's going to go back to them on the first invoice. So when you make the placement, you're going to bill 25 or 30%, just like you would a direct hire. But on the first invoice, you're going to deduct $2,000. They get it back. It's a refund. So if they have a problem with that, guys, another red flag, especially, B2B sales, companies have money. $2,000 is a drop in the bucket for most companies. If they bark over that or are upset about that, I've got a lot of ways of objection handling. It's a whole nother video, but that's how engaged search works. For some reason, I can't open it, but just know those are the highlights of engaged search. It's basically direct hire, but a small fee up front. And the last one is our performance-based search, which I will share with you. Let me bring that over. I'm hoping you guys can see this. Yep, there we go. So I set this up as a PowerPoint. It's pretty cool. So I send this over to my client. This is essentially retained search where you have a direct hire fee or a performance-based search fee, let's say of $30,000, $50,000. We just closed a $60,000 performance-based search. And at the end of this is where I put in the terms and conditions, which I will share with you here. So here is the industry leading replacement guarantee. We say to the client, should the client or the hire terminate the employment relationship during the first 36 months for an SVP, EVP, CXO board member, these are higher level positions, guys. Sometimes we get over $100,000 search fee for these. So we will give a 36-month guarantee. I know that might sound crazy to you. We've never had a problem with like a CEO getting fired or resigning after a year or two. So for us, it's been okay. We haven't had that problem. You could lower that to a year or two if you want, if you feel more comfortable. More terms and condition. Here's the meat and potatoes. We go ahead and put in the placement fee right here. We give the breakdown of how they'll pay us. So we collect a third of the total fee on day one before the search starts. We collect the second installment, the third, when we present a short list of candidates and they agree to interview at least one of them. And then we collect the final installment when the candidate starts working on day one. And we lay that out right here in the terms and conditions. All right, guys, so there you have it. We recapped contract to hire agreements, direct hire agreements, engagement search, and performance-based search, otherwise known as retained search. That's how I share contracts and agreements with my clients and explain it to them ahead of time. Guys, it is critical. Always explain to your client what the agreement entails. Make their life easy. Give them the highlights. It creates honesty and loyalty, credibility, and it just makes their job easier. You can give them the highlights. That's what I do. The rest of the stuff on there, like, I don't understand that. They don't either. They're not attorneys, but it's always good to have on there, obviously. And that's always worked for me. So I hope that helps, guys.